Bueno, pues seguimos. Damos las gracias a los ponentes que han hecho la anterior charla. Esperamos que os haya gustado, que os haya interesado. Hemos tenido la sala llena, seguimos con la sala casi llena, así que vamos directamente con la siguiente ponencia. Por favor. Es un panel sobre habilidades y capacidades. Tenemos con nosotros para este panel a Gabriela Almi, directora de la División Europea de Harvard Business Publishing, a Maria Grazia Squicciarini, directora ejecutiva de la División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanas de la UNESCO, y al doctor Erbat, profesor asociado y responsable de Información y Tecnología de la Computación en Hamad bin Khalifa University. En este caso, la moderadora va a ser Cristina Fernández, directora de AI Liquid Learning Outreach and Communities. Muchas gracias por estar aquí y la palabra es vuestra.
Un aplauso, por favor.
Gracias.
So thank you so much for joining us today on a panel that will focus on the link between skills and capabilities. You know, under the motto, education that works, we wanted to highlight which are the skill sets, the knowledge, and the mindsets that will provide our students with those capabilities that will allow them to drive performance and have impact in their organizations. As he was already presented, we have 3 amazing colleagues just to do so, and we will learn from them how we can empower our students to become excellent professionals and excellent human beings at the same time. So first things first, I would like to pose the first question to Maria Grazia about which are those skills and capabilities that you will identify as the most important ones to be developed nowadays.
Thanks a lot for the question, Christina. I'm very glad to be here. I would like to show you a few slides just to point out what are the skills that emerge to be fundamental for today and tomorrow market of work. Can I go there or can I see from here? Perhaps from here works. Okay, so several times you are asked, what are the skills for the digital era? Well, the answer is actually that we have looked at AI-related skills that emerge from demand in job postings. And what we observe, actually, in this case, I'm showing some data about the United States for a period that is from the 17 to 19. What we see is that by the time we talk about skills for the digital era, and especially skills for AI, one set of skills that is about neural networks emerges as the key. So whatever you look at in these jobs, this is something that the workers of today and tomorrow must have in order to succeed on the digital space. And then we see very clearly the orange bundle that you see there, that there is a methodological core development parts of the network that is really about advancing the technology itself. And this can be taken, ceteris paribus, let's say, same things taken forward to broadly the discussion on digital skills and digital jobs. Then you see emerging a part related to applications, the one in blue. And last but not least, in the case of AI, and this is something that many people actually confuse AI with robotics, there is a robotics-related cluster. What we also see is that there are IT basics and support functions that emerge as being core to any set of skills that workers need to have for AI. And also what we see over time, I'm not showing the data here because we don't have the time, is that skill bundles, so the skills taken together, gets more and more intertwined. And why is this important? Because we need looking at non-AI skills. And what is demanded? Well, you can see here data from 2012 and 2018, where we show the top non-AI related skills still demanded in very technical jobs related to AI. And you see the importance of social-emotional skills that are really related to and complement software-related skills. And what you also see here very clearly is that some remain very important and others grow in importance. Now, try to look, for instance, for data science in 2012. You wouldn't see It wasn't among the third top. So there are new ones that are required. And last but not least, I want to show you this graph because it really talks about overall. By the time we look at all these jobs, what is that appears to be demanded on the marketplace? Well, there are a number of skills that appear in AI-related jobs that tend to be rather general. And we also have a number of skills. Really, here we are taking AI-related skills and non-purely AI-related skills. And so there are some anyway that indeed relate to the tools of the job. So you need to be able to program. You need to know some algorithms. And then you have, of course, the emergence of technical skill bundles, but importantly, cognitive and social emotional skills go hand in hand. So this is really my message about what is important. And this is what also is remarked in the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI about what education and research should do. So here really is emphasized the need for education related to basic literacy, numeracy, coding, and digital skills. And I'll show you some evidence about that. And also, it is important to have an ethical approach that means skills that enable people to have an approach that is human-centered. And last but not least, think about AI, use AI in education, be careful not to reduce cognitive abilities, though. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Gabriela, we go on with you. And again, which are the skills that are identified by Harvard? And also, how do you develop the students to get those skill sets, those mindsets, and those set of knowledge? You have something about superpowers that we would love to know about.
Actually, when I was thinking about today's conversation, so for us, it's all about the human stuff. And one of the key, probably, challenges, because we've been talking about what are the skills that our students need for the future, the gap between what the job market needs and the skills that the students have. And we talk so much about it for so many years, and these gaps still exist. And the big question I had in my mind before coming here is like, what can I bring that is really different that we don't know? Because we talk so much and nothing really changes, right? So we've been doing a lot of research about that, and we talk about, maybe I can go to 2 slides just to show, because if it's there. Yes. So we talk about leadership capabilities. And when we say leadership, it's in the broad sense of leadership, right? Like not top-down, that we are all leaders and future leaders. So we develop a framework that we believe that will help us not only to understand this deeply, because by understanding really deeply this, it will help us to really teach. Because the 2 challenges we see around these skills that are the human stuff, the first one is in the wording. It's in the narrative. We call them still soft skills. And do you know where this comes from? This comes from the 60s, that the US military, they thought that they were the machine things, and everything else was soft. But these are nothing but soft. Someone that is resilient, that has all these capabilities, is really not a soft. So it's way more. So as long as we think about them as soft, I don't think we will do much about them. So the first thing was to go through the details of this, because, well, we say the devil is in the details. So we went really into the granularity of this. We tried, there is a lot of research. We did a lot of research with customers, with the thought leaders in HBS and HBR. And we came up with this idea that capabilities, knowledge, mindsets, and then you have the skills. And we didn't stop there. We went to the micro skills, because if we want to think about the second challenge, why this is still an issue, it's because it's very difficult to teach. I mean, I'm sure some of you are teaching here. So we know that lectures don't work. We need to go in a different space. We need to put ourselves in a different position, and we need to go into practice, into experiences. So we talk a lot about that, but it's not easy, right? So we developed something that we call So it's the capabilities, the skills, and the micro skills. And by doing this research, we came across something that we call superpowers. Actually, these were imperatives that we realized that were super important, were not capabilities, were not skills, were something else, that were around those things that we need to nurture. Maybe we don't teach, but we need to nurture, and the earlier we do that, the better. So basically, we realized that, and coming to your question, what can we do to teach those? What are the things that work? So we know what works. We see Adrian here. So we know simulations work. We know that teaching with experiential learning works, with anything that is around practice and extracting learnings from the practice. So basically, that's my message. And that's it. So one last point here is that's just an example of one capability. So how this framework works, we went to the granularity of all of that, and we mapped our content to try to understand how to tackle each of these skills and micro skills. So when you see a micro skills, then it becomes possible. You try to understand what can you do with that, because when it's something so big as communicating for impact, sounds almost an impossible job to teach. But if you go to the skills and then the micro skills, then it becomes a possibility. So, thank you.
So you break the problem into different, smaller tasks.
Smaller pieces, so then you can do micro activities. So we understand that the new generations, coming back to what are the challenges of the young generation, is the microbytes, the bits and pieces, so how you can do activities that maybe is 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it becomes possible to practice, to learn, to get feedback, because basically the skills are learned through immediate feedback and practice and going back and forth from that. So, yeah.
So thank you so much.
And I was trying to stick to the...
A lot to put into practice. So,
yes, a lot to...
Let's add another layer of complexity here. Dear Dr. Edward, we know that you're a geek, and you know the complexity and how technology, artificial intelligence, and also blockchain is disrupting a lot of our large companies and the market. And you are preparing your students to get the skill sets to be pioneering and to be working with that environment. But we would like to know how you combine those sets of knowledge with those skills about critical thinking, problem solving, management stakeholders, break silos. How do you make your students have both sides?
Thank you so much. So I'm definitely a geek, and actually this is the best time for geeks. And I have my logic why this is the best time for geeks. If you look, for example, and I'm not checking my message, I'm checking my notes. If you think about Europe, one of the most advanced technologically regions, and you want to understand what is happening with the digital skills, 54% of Europeans between the age 16 to 74 have the necessary skills to deliver on the new economy. The target is around 80 for 2030. If you look at the number of the IT skilled workforce, it's around 9 million now in Europe. The target is 20 million by 2030. If you look at adoption of AI, as we talked about it, and big data, it's around 30%. The target is around 75% in order for Europe to be competitive. So if you look at this issue from a European perspective, it's much worse in a lot of other regions in the world. You see that there is a huge problem that we are facing. And if you look from the economical side, now you look at traditional businesses, you go into agriculture, people who maybe do not have formal training, and you see that they have to use IoT, Internet of Things, to measure the heat, temperature, and other issues. You go to transportation, where people now are trying to see how to build those autonomous cars, where people are now using Uber and the like, all of these digital systems, leading to really new business models that have not been seen before. If you look, for example, at the food industry, people now are expanding their restaurant from just being a location with your neighborhood friends to a place where it's online. People can order anytime, anywhere, different locations with all the food delivery. And also looking at how the data science, how through managing your restaurant through AI systems and through software as a service can allow you to think of how users are purchasing things, what are the best combinations, what are the times of the day when you need more workers. If you look at education, the mess we have got ourselves into with online education, with education, you will see that really the digital skills and the digital economy is transforming how we perceive problems and how we can really deal with it. So now, reflecting on that, what should our students do? What should they get? There is a lot of frameworks of the skills, digital skills. But basically, if you look at the general student, not an IT student, there's a lot of information fluency, data fluency. They need to know what's the data that is there, how to organize it, how to search it, how to manage it. Communication also. They need to know how to use digital tools to communicate, how to collaborate online, and how to know the etiquettes of working online. If you look at the safety of the data, they need to know a little bit about data privacy, data security, and how to manage the data in a careful way so they will not leak their information and other people's information. So there's a lot of skills that at the level of the general student that they need to know now that maybe were not a big issue in the past. And I want to end with that they also need to basically understand the implications of the technology. There is AI now looking into everything, our faces, our financials, our life, what they should do in order to survive this blockchain, not Bitcoin, blockchain, which can also revolutionize how we build trust among people that generally don't trust each other. So they need to have a touch and understanding of those technologies and what they mean to use them and what are the benefits and what are the issues there. And this requires new type of curricula, pedagogy that I think our colleagues here touched upon.
Thank you so much. So let's develop on that idea about ethics. You know, everything is changing so fast. And there is a disruption that leads to opportunities and a lot of risk. And we need to develop those ethics in advance, not to wait and see which are the consequences and then, okay, let's regulate. Can we do it in advance? How do we do it? And which is the place where we put ethics on this? For any of you.
I can be the alarmist.
Come on.
We don't do it now.
Not yet.
Not yet, because if we look at any computer science curriculum, you might find maybe one course that talks about ethics. And when they talk about ethics, it's very generic notion of ethics where maybe it's half a course basically where they don't even reach AI ethics and human, how it affects people. So really, an engineering student from most traditional universities now is not aware about ethics. Just one thing, when we were trained as computer scientists, they always tell us, test your code, make sure you test. There are all these mega failures with big ships that went to space and exploded because of this. There's very little of that happening around the ethics of technology and what people need to do in order not to fail. So I alarmed you.
Well, I can propose a solution. I already hinted at that, and this is our recommendation on the ethics of AI. But apart from the joke, we really think it can be a deal maker, let's say, internationally, in the sense that we think about ethics as a very simple concept, that is respecting human rights and human dignity. Now, as simple as it seems, it's the most difficult thing to implement. And why we think it was necessary to come with a recommendation that actually we were very proud was adopted by acclamation by acclamation means that everybody stands up and like, you know, a standing ovation kind of. And we have 193 countries. So you can imagine the work that was behind that. And this that really, it is ethics by design. We want to bring all the stakeholders around the table. This means governments, as well as businesses, as well as civil society. Because the problem of AI being really a general purpose technology is that it won't be like in other parts of history where we did mistakes, we tried, and then we fixed the pieces. We know, I mean, in economics, you have a number of studies that are about development or economic growth, and then you have studies about inclusion and how to fix inequalities. Well, this time, if we allow AI to develop, be used, be deployed, and then we think about the consequences, it might be too late. So that's why we think we have to put the design at the center. And what you were saying is really fundamental. We need raising awareness. I mean, even the coders are not aware of what they are doing and what are the consequences of their programming, nor they are aware of the need to put in the algorithm, and all those that have programs like we have, they know it can be done. And we also have to debunk 4 myths. That is, AI is not a black box. Someone has programmed it. Someone has decided what comes in it. Let's put checkpoints that allow us to fix the problems as they arise.
Okay.
Well, my short message is coming back to the very first message that I brought. For us, the skills that we need for today and for the future are all human. So that ethics is crossing everything we talk about. So if we think about those skills as human skills that are probably the most challenging to develop, ethics is absolutely everywhere. I mean, it's not a separate issue that we need to tackle. It's in every one of the capabilities, in every skill we talk about, in every micro skill. So yeah, so it's for today and for tomorrow. And actually, things are changing very fast, but those skills remain the same. So it's something that we need to start developing today, because those skills will make them future-proof. When we think about how to make our institutions future-proof, basically, if we develop those skills that are human, they will. Doesn't mean that it's easy, but they will stay relevant. So if we want our students to be relevant, if we focus there, we will not make a mistake, probably.
I have one last question before opening the floor, so get ready for your own questions, please. We are developing our students, and we are getting them ready for the world of work. And some of them, we would love them to see them as leaders. But we are seeing that they have different values from previous generations, like they want a balance between personal life and professional life. They want to work remotely. They want to own the projects. They want to work in a different way. So let's talk about leadership from our own students and for the leaders they are going to be facing, which is the kind of leadership that you would like to see for our students and the kind of leaders you would like our students to become. Any of you?
Do you want to start?
Well, we were talking about those superpowers, right, that we identify. And actually, probably you all know some people that go above and beyond it. Like they are outstanding leaders, right? Maybe because they have those superpowers that we used to kind of ignore or even dismiss or despise somehow. Like some people think that maybe they are not so important, that we were born with them, you cannot develop, so you can really nurture them, like empathy or even kindness. So actually, if we combine all of that and we think about adaptive leadership, leaders that are authentic and that drive through inclusion, obviously we will be able to listen to those students, to those needs, and adapt to those changes. So, yeah, that's how we see that.
I love that superpower idea. I just love it. What about the rest of you?
Well, I think, first of all, really aware leaders of what they do will have consequences, and for, depending on how successful they are in the leadership, for many. Accountable. I think they have to know that, they have responsibility, and this responsibility is about, especially the ethics. So put the human and humankind at the center. Dynamic, for sure. I can't see any leader for today and tomorrow that is not able to adapt to change. And actually, if you're a leader, you drive the change. And last but not least, you said it, empathic. Yeah. Because that goes together with being able to have human-centered developments. And then by the time you do this, the others come with you. And you have to have a vision where you want to take the others.
Yeah. I see.
I think we have to understand also, if you are in an organization, you join an organization, and you come across leadership that might not be at the same level. For example, if you look at digital skills, studies show that younger demography are much more digitally aware. So maybe the way they think, the solution they propose will be very different from somebody who's well established 20, 30 years. So this is something, if you look at it from the other side, you have to appreciate that gap and know that anybody joining any company it's never going to be perfect leadership. So the ability to just be there and be resilient, being resilient, knowing that you have to teach also the people around you these skills if they don't know them. If you go to a place where mostly senior people, you have to teach them. You have to also see the world from their side. They don't trust the technology. How can you make them trust the technology? So I think this type of awareness and discussion and being able to bridge that gap. And as universities also, we have this lifelong learning. If a leader on the other side of the table and he or she now is trying to lead people who are very different, it's on them now to go back every 5, 6, 7 years, upskill, know more, so they can lead with more confidence and more merit, hopefully.
Wonderful. So we would like to open the floor. Does anybody have a question that would like to pose them? William.
Very interesting. Thank you for your comments. I just had a question about the superpowers. Thank you very much. I had a question about the superpowers in particular. When we're talking about developing these superpowers, can you talk a little bit about how we might assess the development of these, the growth of these superpowers? For example, students or leaders over time. How do we know that there is actual growth in these areas? Starting from, as you mentioned, the micro skills activities, heading up towards the larger capabilities.
Actually, it's interesting that you bring the assessment as one, because this is probably one of the reasons that it's so difficult, right? Like, because we think that we cannot assess, or we cannot monitor or grade, even grading, right? Like in academia, we talk about grading. Like in general, like capabilities or skills are difficult to assess. And it's basically what we develop is a framework that allows to understand the granularity, and it starts with the practice. And then from the practice, you go and you can go further. And then it's all about the practice and the feedback. So it's also even with an avatar. This is in beta testing, so we are developing something that we will be able to share. But if you want to know more about that, I can share. But the idea is that it's all about the feedback that you get immediately feedback. So it's micro exercises that you get, and you can, definitely you can assess. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
But I just want to make a nuance between the superpowers and the skills, because we realize that that's why we put them like in a separate space, because the superpowers were something that were kind of difficult to teach, but we can nurture, which is slightly a bit different. And it doesn't mean we cannot develop. We can nurture, we can develop. But teaching them in a linear way, probably very difficult to teach empathy. But we can nurture. And what we were saying is that the earlier we develop those, the better. Yeah.
Jaime?
A question that is linked to the previous one. I really like the idea of the superpowers and how you bring also the emotional skills, no, to the learning experience. And the question is, also you mentioned the mindset, no, and the importance of bringing the feelings and the beliefs, no, to the experience, and also connecting to the digital skills, no, and the tools. So what are your recommendations about bringing the feelings and beliefs to the learning experience? And what are the tools that maybe we could explore also for doing that? Not knowing that those things you can nurture, but not necessarily teach.
Well, basically, we were talking about that we learn through the practice and the experiences. So obviously, we know that putting a professor in front of a classroom in a linear way, transmitting knowledge, doesn't work. So it works when you start from a practice and experience, and then you get feedback. You learn by doing and then by reflecting of what happened, right? So then you create what Maria Gracia was talking about, the awareness, right? Like you are self-aware, you get feedback of what happened. So it's you learn through the process of the experiences itself, so the doing, but in particular, then with the reflection that comes afterward. That for example, we deeply believe in the case method, but that not only cases could be through a simulation. So basically, that puts the students at the center. So it's what we call participant-centered learning. So the students learn by preparing the case, and then by discussing in all those particular skills that are related to what the skills that we identified, like the collaboration, the teamwork, the communication, and all of those, they are practiced in this process, and then they get feedback about that. So I'm not sure I'm answering exactly your question.
May I add to what you were saying? Because I think what she's saying is very important, especially if one thinks that we have to stop thinking about education starting in university. There is a lot that can be, so it's true, you can't make a person that is not empathic when he or she is 20. But if you work, and these are the last results of all the literature on skills, start nurturing a number of attitudes, a number of inclinations between, let's say, 1 and 3, even before entering the preschool, is when you can teach a number of A values and endow them with competencies that then you can nurture further down, and then you can go really to the superpower you were talking about, while at the same time helping them being able to address the number of tasks, and then having the skills to be able to do that. I know, for instance, that UCL in London is working a lot on this kind of analysis related to empowering individuals with a number of social-emotional skills, let's call it like them, soft powers, that then become superpowers by the time we grow up, if nurtured the right way.
Yeah, I was particularly kind of like, I loved also the idea that these were superpowers and not just, because then, as I was saying at the beginning, it's all about the narrative, right? Foucault was talking about that we make the reality with the words, right? Like this was 50 years ago. So this is not new. We know that, but still we call them soft, and soft sounds like something lower. So yeah, when we think about them as superpowers, maybe we will all, as the worldwide community of educators that maybe are outside of the university, are everywhere. Like when we learn, we educate our kids, we think that this is important, and maybe we start nurturing from the early age.
And building from that, we cannot make somebody empathic at 20, but at university, when somebody's being empathic, we can value that and we can give some recognition. So this person will see that empathy as a value. So, and we are not used to recognize those kind of things. So maybe we can also change that. We have another questions there.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to ask something related to what all of you said about the skills. Maybe this is a bit philosophical, maybe this is a bit general, but when we talk about skills and when we talk about what's important, we keep, to some extent, adding up to the list. We keep including new skills, new things. People need to be leaders, to be successful, to be good, to be valued. But I do have a feeling that we just keep adding up to everything we already have, and we never seem to take something off that list, to say, you know, if our list of important skills is too full, it's just like a to-do list. If you have too many things on a to-do list and everything's important, nothing is important. So my question is, are there skills that you feel have been considered more important than they really are, or that have become less important with time, and skills that we should value less so that there's enough space to value all these new skills that we are considering now?
If I may, it's true. Curriculum are getting overloaded. That's what I think what you're heading to. Now, by the time we talk about skills, I think it's like nowadays saying that there are many more people with this and this other disease just because we know how to test for it. It's not that these diseases didn't exist before, but now we recognize there are many more instances just because we are able to test for it. The logic is the same with skills. It is like we don't need to think about skills as something that is taught in a classroom like this. You can teach a number of skills through the creative methodology you apply in order to get some concepts. By the time you teach mathematics, you can do it in a way that, you know, leads to teamwork, leadership, co-creation, creativity. So it's true that to some extent the list is expanding, but that doesn't mean necessarily that this entails overloaded curricula. And actually, your question was the question that I was asked like 3 or 4 years ago by some companies. I'm not going to name names here. And say, you know, by the time we get people that come out of educational system, we lack A, B, C, D. And I was like, and you should tell, you know, governments to invest on this, this, and that. I was like, fine. But then what you would take out of the list, they said, well, nothing, because it's a complementary thing. So it's really in the methodology that lies the response, and then prioritization of things the way they are done. So we can also, let's say, think on how to best structure and test, of course, scientifically, or when is the most suitable moment to acquire certain skills rather than other, so that it's a start approach to earning a set of skills that are supposed to be needed in a time like the digital era we live in, which is nevertheless more complicated than previous times. So indeed, the skills, the competencies necessary to navigate them are increasing, as well as the recognition of what we need. We are more aware, perhaps, not that they were not needed before.
Yeah, in particular, sorry, just one thing to add to this. I agree that it's not necessarily they are new. For example, I don't know, the importance of a skill like team collaboration, and it's not really new. It's maybe that we just recognize that how important is that, or leading through inclusion. Maybe, well, maybe good news, right? That we realize that this was important, and I think it's just part of the learning process that we go through as human beings. As long as we think that those skills are the important ones are the human stuff, it's just what makes us human, especially when we think about AI. Like, we need to focus there, because we will not compete with the machines. We need to focus on what makes us unique.
So just to add to this point is AI, and the part of the promise is a lot of the monotonic, boring tasks that were part of what we used to do and we should have done maybe 10 years back are going to disappear more in the future. So some things are going off the list, but these are the things that are monotonic, easy to automate. But we as humans, it's the creativity, the problem solving, the team working. So these things are going to be there forever. But how we approach them and how we do them is very different. And this is my main sort of motto. Businesses are changing, technology, and by design, technology changes. Every 4 or 5 years, it's a big change. So some things get added, but hopefully in the long term, some things will be removed, or we will learn them so early on. That's like the digital native. They know how to do Excel, PowerPoint from grade 5. I don't need to teach them in college, like which I used to do maybe 10, 12 years back. So.
Okay. And just to finish, what about if we change memorizing? We know it's really important when we teach. You have to memorize, you have to pass a test, and then you forget about it. What if we still give some credit to that memorizing part, but not all the credit? What if we change the whole thing and include those skills? Time's up, so thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for adding to the conversation. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.